Central States Wrestling was a professional wrestling promotion that operated from 1948 until it closed in 1989. Its main headquarters was based in Kansas, and it also ran shows throughout Missouri, Iowa, and Nebraska. It was also known as Heart of America Sports Attractions, Midwest Wrestling Association, and finally, World Wrestling Alliance. The territory was one of the original territories of the National Wrestling Alliance, with two of the 6 founding fathers of the NWA, Paul Pinky George and Orville Brown, promoting it. And its latter years, it was purchased by Bob Geigel, who changed the name to World Wrestling Alliance, in an attempt to compete with the national expansion of Jim Crockett and Vince McMahon. The move did not pay off, and Geigel closed the WWA in 1989. The tape library is currently owned by the WWE when it was obtained through their purchase of World Championship Wrestling, the previous owners of the library. This is the untold story of Central States Wrestling. It was 1912. The Boston Red Sox beat the New York Giants 4-3 to win the World Series. White Star liner RMS Titanic departs from Southampton, England, with more than 2,200 passengers and crew on her maiden voyage bound for New York, but strikes an iceberg in the northern Atlantic and sinks with the loss of more than 1,500 lives. Pioneer aviator Wilbur Wright of the Wright brothers dies of typhoid fever. Casimir Funk formulates a concept of vitamins, which he originally named Vital Almonds. And on June 24, 1912, a mid-card wrestler by the name of Curtis Kerr of Rochester, New York, began promoting shows in the area, seeing stars such as the wrestling physician Dr. B.F. Roller, Yusuf Hussein, and a young Gotch. By the following year, Curtis Kerr had returned to his roots as a mid-card wrestler and had moved to Texas, and by 1920, wrestling had died down in the area and was considered a circus sideshow or an added attraction to a boxing event. That lasted until the late 1930s, when Orville Brown made his way into the sport. Orville Brown grew up on a small farm in Sharon, Kansas, where he worked during the mornings before walking several miles to school in Kiowa, Kansas. He only attended 1 year of school due to financial hardships and left home at the age of 11. Brown was noticed by Ernest Brown, who was no relation but a former manager of amateur and professional wrestlers in the late 1920s, who was convinced that he might have a future as a wrestler and agreed to train him. By 1939, he partnered with former boxer Pinky George and had formed the Midwest Wrestling Association, which was the largest organization of wrestling promoters in the country. This group recognized John Pesek, who had the most solid claim to the title as heavyweight champion, and Orville Brown and Dick Shycat shared the rating as #1 contender. Pesek was playing it very carefully, not beating top contenders. He was warned to become more active and agreed to more matches with top challengers. In January 1940, the governing board of the Midwest Wrestling Association gave Pesek a formal written order to meet at least one of the #1 contenders by June 1, 1940. Pesek failed to comply, and on June 5, 1940, the Midwest Wrestling Association membership meeting in Louisville, Kentucky, by unanimous vote, ousted John Pesek from the championship by default. The executive board directed that a match be held as soon as possible between Shycat and Brown to establish a new champion. The Brown-Shycat title match was held in Columbus, Ohio on June 28, 1940. Orville beat him in 2 straight falls. In the ringside ceremonies, Orville Brown was proclaimed the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world and was awarded the Diamond Belt. The championship was undisputed as far as the Midwest Wrestling Association was concerned, but there were other smaller groups which had their own champion. Orville Brown began a campaign to force other champions to meet him and other organizations to recognize his legitimate claim to the title. Orville was the catalyst which brought about the formation of the National Wrestling Alliance in 1948. Cards were held throughout the state, including Salina, Garden City, Great Bend, Emporia, Atchison, Ottawa, and Manhattan, and usually held in the National Armory, high school gyms, or a memorial hall. By 1949, Orville Brown had held some 13 world titles and was recognized as the first NWA champion. His professional wrestling career ended on November 1st, 1949 when disaster struck. Orville came over the top of a hill near Bethany, Missouri to find a semi-truck trailer crosswise in the road. His car struck the trailer and lodged underneath it. Both him and his passenger were powerful men and had pushed back the seats as far as possible, which broke. This fortunately prevented them from being decapitated. His passenger suffered a broken arm and shoulder, plus numerous cuts and bruises. Orville's head struck the main frame of the trailer. He had severe brain damage, plus cuts and bruises. His car, a nearly new Cadillac, was sold for salvage for $218. He was scheduled to participate in a unification match against Lou Thesz on November 25, 1949. Thesz was awarded the title as Brown was unable to compete. In a 1952 article published by the Catholic Advance, wrestling was at an all-time low. The article, written by Bill Warner, described pro wrestling becoming increasingly revolting with effeminately dressed men and masculine women. Some of the stars that came through the territory around this time were Wee Willie Davis, Richard Brown, Wild Red Berry, Dr. Lee Grable, Gorgeous George, and Tommy O'Toole. The Central States title in the early 1950s was originally called the NWA Heart of America Heavyweight title. Orville Brown completely retired in 1957 and did not retain an interest in wrestling after that. The world was changing and wrestling changed more than anything. It really hurt him to see what television and unscrupulous people had done in order to milk more money from the sport he enjoyed since the time of the caveman. He would not even watch wrestling on television. His beloved sport had been destroyed.
Well, it's a legend of Bob Orton. Won the world title back in 1951. When it comes to fighting, he faced everyone. From the NWA and every federation. Won the tag team title with Buddy Austin. Knocking out bums, had two sons. One in the main event of WrestleMania 1. The other one got hit on by Terry Garvin. Stood 6'2", about 245. If you're looking for you better run and hide. It's a legend of Bob Orton. Former tag team champion. From Capital Wrestling to Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Past days before turning 77. According to Wikipedia, ashes spread at Mount Charleston.
In 1963, wrestler/promoter and current U.S. champion Bob Geigel took over and partnered with Pat O'Connor, as well as promoters George Simpson and Gus Karras to form Heart of America Sports Attractions Incorporated. Throughout the 1960s, the territory would see stars such as Luther Lindsay, Sonny Myers, Jessica Rogers, Kathy Starr, George Gump, and Bulldog Henning. The television program of the Central States area was All Star Wrestling, and it was filmed during their weekly Thursday night card in Memorial Hall in Kansas City. The matches were usually shown on Sunday mornings at 8 a.m. on KSHB TV Channel 41. Wrestlers that appeared in the Central States area in the 1970s included Bob Geigel, who was the head booker and promoter of the late 1970s, Harley Race, Bulldog Bob Brown, Black Angus Campbell, Roger Nature Boy Kirby, Mike George, Jesse Ventura, Danny Littlebear, The Viking, Big O Bob Orton, Steve Bolas, Pat O'Connor, Frankie Diamond, Omar Atlas, Bobby Whitlock, Sonny Myers, and Ronnie Etchison. The promotion continued to be a cornerstone of the NWA, with Geigel sitting on the board of directors and even served as chairman of the NWA from 1978 until 1987. The period is considered to be the last glory years of the NWA.